Hey there kids and cats, your Inotia King here. And yes, this is the first time I've used this intro. This is the first time you're hearing my voice at all. Originally, I designed this channel to be a no commentary style because it was purely to show gaming content for my first series, Inotia 4. Then I started to find things I wanted to talk about, but I'd already gotten used to the silent format. Eventually, it got to a point where it was a little silly to stick with the format. It's actually harder to make all these text screens than to just run audio with some clips. But as longtime viewers know, YouTube's been naughty with my channel, and most of my videos are getting their view counts, likes, and subs, all the things YouTubers request from their viewers because it does help the channel, and they were getting removed from my videos. So, videos I probably could have started doing voice for, I just didn't want to put in the effort because it would get messed up by YouTube anyway. And that's actually one of the reasons behind not doing this theory video, which again, longtime viewers and my followers on HoYoLab will know is over a year in the making by now. It's a pretty big theory, at least to me, and I've used it as a basis for my research into other theories of mine. I just couldn't bear to make it, only to watch its performance get altered too. I should say a thank you again to you guys who keep commenting even though most of it doesn't show on the videos. You guys are amazing. Anyway, Genshin's getting to a point where if I don't suck it up and talk about this, then I'm not going to be able to make sense if I want to keep bringing up new theories. So I'm biting the bullet, and I figure if I am, I might as well give it my all. So let's get to it. Oh, before I start, I should actually apologize first. I know viewers watching theory videos like this hate it when YouTubers do it, but this is going to have to be a multi-part series. There's a ton of info to cover, and it'll be too much to absorb if I get through it all at once. Okay, now let's get to it. As most of us have likely researched by now, a large amount of Genshin's terms and names relate to Gnosticism. Many theories have already been made regarding this relationship, but I feel like most have only brushed the surface, even up to now. So what is that theory? In basic Gnosticism, the world was made after a true god, the monad, meaning the one. Its essence split into several beings called aeons that eventually led to one called Sophia, meaning wisdom. Sophia then makes the mistake of creating a lesser god called Demiurge, meaning builder, who then creates the physical world and humanity. The problem is that Demiurge was cast out by Sophia, so it never knew the divine world and believes it is the highest divine power. When it then created humans, it used a piece of the divine world it inherited from Sophia, and that piece can allow humans to ascend back into divinity. But Demiurge instead thinks they would ascend to its version of divinity, and it doesn't want that. It creates 7 Archons to preside over humanity and prevent them from reaching its power. Monad notices this, and sends 2 new Aeons to help humanity ascend against Demiurge and its Archons. And this is generally where most theories stop. The idea is that Celestia is where some Demiurge is, and it made the Archons to control people by giving them visions. Meanwhile, Aether and Lumine were sent by some Monad, the true god, to save the humans of Teyvat. Thing is, most of that theory comes from the fact that Dainsleif said so.
We humans have our humanity.
And
that throne in the sky is not reserved for you.
And all that. However, thanks to the We Will Be Reunited Archon Quest, we know Dainsleif isn't all-knowing. He's got his own biases based on the beliefs of Khaenri'ah. After all, the only other major piece of evidence for this theory is
of mankind ends now.
Which is a problem in itself. So what else should we be seeing from Genshin's links with Gnosticism? Well, how about duality? Most Western philosophies deal in dualities of some form. Good versus evil, light versus dark, day versus night, man versus woman, etc. But Gnosticism has made a whole spectrum of what that even means. On the one hand, you have Valentinianism, which believes that good and light and all the positives surpass the negatives. This is termed as monism, meaning that good will always triumph over evil. Love is greater than hate, etc. God is God, but the devil is just a fallen angel under God, sometimes even predetermined by God to fall. But at the extreme opposite to Valentinianism is something more likely to fit with Genshin, and is something I so far haven't seen another theory bring up. Gnosticism spread far and wide in the early days of Christianity. Its analysis of religion adopted from and was adopted into Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and Buddhism, specifically Mahayana Buddhism, which would later spread to China, where Mihaly is from. This was called Manichaeism. Unlike Valentinianism, the duality of good and evil in Manichaeism are as equals. Light doesn't surpass dark, they are just two parts of the whole. Another aspect of this version of Gnosticism is that everything falls onto the individual, meaning good and evil are both equally present in every individual, humans and gods alike. So I hope you guys can understand why this belief system spread into China. The most well-known Chinese philosophy is the yin-yang, where positive and negative aspects are kept in balance in every person. On top of that, there is negativity in the positive aspect and positivity in the negative aspect. How can we apply this now to the Gnostic creation story? Monad isn't just God. Monad is the one. It's the concept of a one. It divides into many by separating into opposing pairs, or the dyad. All of these dyads formed out of the monad are called the pleroma, or the whole. So this version of heaven is just everything. The beings in these dyads are the aeons made in pairs as a balance of positive and negative concepts, which is called syzygy. Yes, this is what that freaky word from the Spiral Abyss tab is about. It comes from a Greek word meaning linked together. Anyway, along comes Sophia, representing wisdom, who struggles from being separated from monad, so she doesn't unite with her paired aeon. You don't want to know. To have syzygy and create more dyads. Instead, she tries to create on her own, which results in demiurge. She's horrified by this creature and casts it out of the pleroma. Devoid of monad and the other aeons, Demiurge thinks it is the most divine being and ends up following Monad's path by creating the world of man. But right here, we actually have another equivalent duality. Pleroma as the world of light, and Demiurge has created the world of dark. Whoa. Final Fantasy fans, settle down. It's not the same thing. Buddhists, I see they're smirking. Now that we have a physical world and humanity, we're in business. If you know Buddhism, the concept of reincarnation and nirvana regards the world of man as hell, aka a dark world, and ascending through nirvana brings a person into divinity, the light world. This is exactly how Manichaeism defines the path of humanity. In short, when Demiurge created humans, he did, in fact, place a piece of divinity into each one. That piece is trapped in the physical bodies of humans in Demiurge's physical world. What is nirvana in Gnosticism? The gnosis. So when humans obtain the gnosis, they will be freed from their physical bodies and ascend back into Pleroma, reaching divinity. And as we previously established, Demiurge is fearful that humanity will ascend to its version of divinity and become its equal. So it creates archons that rule over humanity and create obstacles to prevent them from gaining gnosis, nirvana. Many theories point to visions being this obstacle. Dainsleif calls it that too, and since the visions were said to be bestowed on select humans by Genshin's archons, it does make sense. But that's where things get more complicated. We're now going to have to get away from Gnosticism and go over to Chinese philosophy and culture. The reason being is that we've been made aware that many terms in this game are not the same between languages. I found this out sooner than most, again, from We Will Be Reunited. A few of these terms aren't used anymore thanks to better localization, but it's still good to remind everybody to be aware of these discrepancies. So let's take an easy one.
I'll go with you to the next world to find a new home. At least, not yet. Until the abyss has engulfed the thrones, my war with destiny will see no end.
Fans of anime might be familiar with what destiny is called in Japanese, unme. Mona talks about destiny, and in the Japanese dialogue, she uses this word many times.
運命よ、水面に映るのです。運命よ、ここにいでよ。これが運命です。運命には逆らえません。
Our sibling, on the other hand, uses the term tenni, which is more like God's mandate, or as the English version universally translates it now, the heavenly principles. Likewise, when the Sustainer states that the arrogation of mankind is at an end, she's actually saying that man's defiance of the heavenly principles is at an end. Tenni is the heavenly principles, and she's sustaining them, hence, she's the sustainer of heavenly principles. Anyway, that's not news anymore, but some things are still getting players confused. What is an Archon, guys? Many players are distinguishing between Archons and quote-unquote regular gods. This could make sense based on that surface-level understanding of Gnosticism in this game that I talked about at the start of the video. The idea that Demiurge created Archons to control humanity and use visions to hold them back. But notice how the game itself has been diverging from that idea. Is Gnosticism still the basis of this game? Sure. But that doesn't mean it has to revolve around all of its concepts. In fact, instead, it can appropriate some of these concepts for different purposes, and Archon is a Gnostic term that's been used in this way. In Chinese, all the gods, Archons included, have the same classification, Mo-shen, which came from the Chinese translation for the Ars Goetia, because that's where MiHoYo was getting the names of the Archons. There's no separate term for Archon versus God like there is in English. They are all Mo-shen. Some players are under the impression that Archon is what a god becomes if they get a Gnosis and join the Seven. No. Being a part of the Seven is already the differentiator. Notice A's title when we fight her? This is likely what caused the early translation issues naming Decarabian as the Animo Archon, because he actually is an Animo Archon since he's a god that controls wind. Other scenes felt like reinforcement of this misunderstanding, like when Zhongli said he was no longer the Geo Archon. Thankfully, the Orodori Festival helped fix
They're all
that.
bards, aren't they? Well, where's Tone Bard then? Huh. Strange. He's pretty famous in Mondstadt. Do you think he didn't receive an invitation? Huh? Why's that? Oh, Paimon sees what you're getting at. Even though Venti no longer rules over Mondstadt, he's still an Archon.
So, was Zhongli lying? No. He's not the Geo Archon in the sense that he's no longer acting in that position. He has chosen to live his life as the human Zhongli, so in that sense he is no longer the Geo Archon. But in reality, if you were to classify what he is, then he is still an Archon with Geo elemental powers, a Geo Archon. And that's the issue most theories run into when they talk about stuff like Gnosis and visions. Yes, Dainsleif says visions are fake things which actually hold humans back. But we know he's from Conria, a place where they don't use visions and are strictly opposed to the gods that give them. It's actually a very cool thing in storytelling called the unreliable narrator. A shorthand guide to this for my fellow theory crafters is this. Information established as pure fact can be taken for what it is. There are 7 elements. Li Yue is run by the Qixing. Albedo has a yellow star mark on his neck. On the other hand, if a character makes a statement or the information starts with something like, legends say, then that is tentative information and shouldn't be the basis of a theory. Further interpretation is necessary. Visions in Chinese are the God's eye, 神之眼. Now, if we took Dainsleif's word for it, then sure, visions can be falsified by a malevolent god, or be used by it to spy on the humans that carry them. But God's eye, in the original form, could actually be translated as a divine sight. Now, if we think about it that way, it should feel different, right? Do you guys remember Dr. Livingstone during that one commission? She complained about how not having a vision slowed her progress. Not to mention, this is one of many quests that makes use of elemental sight, something only available to allogenes. In Chinese, shen, or the Shin in Genshin, is used in context of any talents that are seemingly rare. As an example, the show Doctor Who is translated as 神秘博士, or literally the doctor, the PhD version of the medical version, of divine secrets, which is to say he's a specialist with many uncommon skills. Unlike in Gnosticism and what Dainsleif thinks, a vision given to a human isn't necessarily a trap. It is so far one of the only ways humans can come one step closer to ascending into divinity. Additionally, allogenes, which is the English name for vision holders, are said to have the power to reject the demiurge in Gnostic texts. Along this same track, we are seeing multiple archons in this game that aren't anything close to the archons of Gnosticism. Venti wants his people to be free and make their own choices. Zhongli spent a great deal of time and effort to guarantee his people will be fine once he's gone, and spent even longer shackled to them, fearing they wouldn't. The Tsaritsa is taking up arms against Celestia on behalf of her people, and potentially all the people of Teyvat. She also seems to have the support of Zhongli, though he doesn't agree with her methods. We'll get back to him later. And you know what? Gnosis is also in this translation bubble. Achieving Gnosis in Gnosticism is to have the knowledge to ascend. It's the same as Nirvana in Buddhism. But a Gnosis in Genshin is more like a core, right? It's what the Archons use as a source of divine power that lets them do more than they could without it. Zhongli, again, for example, needs his Gnosis to create Mora. But he doesn't need it to retain the vast amounts of wisdom that define his personality. So how else can we define the core of something? Like the heart? And we're learning. So in Chinese and Japanese, Gnosis is actually the heart of God. Kami no kokoro. And because it's the heart of a god, that's really the only purpose it serves. It powers the Archon. So with all of that in mind, we can finally start to really piece together what's actually going on. Instead of looking at the story with a kind of Valentinian view of dualism, we can take a look at it from a Chinese Taoist and Buddhist-derived Manichaeist view. And we'll go to that next time. See you for part 2.